Everybody knows that reference.
You guys don't laugh at my stuff. It's gonna suck.
It's not funny. It's not because we don't like you.
Okay.
On that note,
On that note, thank you for coming, Jason. Every time I do this,
Armor guy couldn't make it, so I'm doing, heckling by proxy.
you get heckle for 3 people.
Oh, he said he listened for 2.
Yeah, but he says he had more important things to do, like, files, fingernails, or something. I don't know.
Jason,
Sorry, my bad.
the little inside voice we talked about.
Coming in. Please do.
Should I be using this for recording, or how do you guys?
It's we're doing open mic, but if that projects better, that would be great. I'm trying to figure out why you're.
Great, or whatnot.
This is the only presentation that didn't seem to fit. I don't know if it's because you're doing 16 by 9 and.
I'm doing 16 by 9.
I would have figured the projector would have handled that properly.
Never put that past the projector. What's that? You can just roll the screen up. I like that idea.
You could do that. I'm sure it's.
Roll up, roll up, roll up.
I don't know if the focus is set for.
Roll it. Come on. Give
Yeah,
it
it
a
does.
touch.
Looks okay.
And it goes. Do not be afraid.
No, it's gonna
Almost. Put your pockets in line. There you go.
Don't worry about that train. Doctor's orders.
It instantly makes the slide.
Nothing good ever starts with pulled string.
All right, our next speaker is an international man of mystery who has been relentlessly pursued by the one-armed man. Actually, Rob is now, as of November 1st, the senior security strategist for HP.
And now you know.
He brings a pragmatic approach to enterprise security, combining over a decade of technical and management skills in the information security field. He uses his experience to build bridges between technology and people. There you go.
And on that note, yeah, sorry, back to clap. How many of you guys have seen me speak before? Besides Jason, he's like, you live in my bushes, Jason?
Well, the restraining order wasn't very specific, so.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Having fun so far? Wow. His phone rings as I start. That's brilliant. So my name is Rafal. There's going to be an annoying string that's hanging right here the entire time during my talk. So we'll try to take to it and not be distracted completely in this world. So this talk's called House Cards. It's kind of a collision between this preparedness, disaster recovery, and information security. It's a number of things that get together to do what we really do. And the format is probably not what you're used to. A little bit about me. I've been HP for coming up on 5 years. I know that makes me old, at least. I've been doing information security for about 10 years. I've played in various large sandboxes. And so this is kind of the genesis of a lot of that experience. And don't take this as I've always been awesome in my career, so this is all the great stuff. This is more or less, I failed a number of times. Please don't do the same things I did. So with that, I'll start us off by making a statement that policy support substitute for preparation. Has anybody ever run into a situation where this actually applies? So, okay, feel free to be a little bit more interactive. If not, I will go get everybody coffee, because I'll make up for all of y'all, and it won't be pretty. So who here knows how to change a tire? Okay, so great. Lots of people know how to change tires, but how many of you guys can actually do it at the roadside, with cars whizzing by you in the dark while it's sleeting and your significant other is screaming at you that you're late for the party? Right? It's a whole. If you've done that, it's an entirely different ballgame, is it not?
Yes.
Like, under pressure is not the time to learn how to change a tire. It's kind of like you find out your in-laws are coming to Thanksgiving dinner the night before, and they go, well, you can make a dinner, right? That's not the time you want to get out the cookbook and understand what the other dials do. Not a good time. So what does changing tires and Thanksgiving dinner with the in-laws have to do with security? I think it has a lot, actually. So really, a lot of us get through and we practice security, or we think we do. How many of you guys here actually practice, air quotes, security? Okay, more of you should be raising your hands.
Air quote security.
Air quote security, I like it. All right. Those of you that didn't raise your hands, I'm a little concerned. So how many of you guys know what practice makes? You're all wrong. It makes good enough. See, I get you every time on this. Right, but think about this, right? Any Formula One fans? Anybody here that lives in Austin? Okay, well, that's fine. Won't hold that against you. But there's I'm a big Formula One fan. I love watching them change 4 tires on a car in 2.6 seconds. Right? I blink that fast. Like literally, the car pulls in and it pulls out. Somewhere along the line, 4 tires come off, 4 tires go on, and the guy gets back in and drives away. That's mind-blowing. Guess what? Those people didn't get that fast by reading a manual that said how to change tires. Right? That would be like 4 minutes. So practice actually makes good enough because none of us are perfect, and there's no such thing as a perfect security room. If you find it, I'd like to come work for you. It sounds like a great place. So what is our goal in information security? And I think this is kind of one of those questions that is philosophical in nature, because a lot of us, unfortunately, at a lot of security conferences I end up going to, feel like we do security for a living. What do you do in security? Well, we secure things. Sure, but you ever play the question of 5 whys? Jason, you got it. Anybody ever do the 5 whys thing? Like, okay, this is what you should do. Why? And you keep asking why until either they get annoyed with you, which happens, or you get to the root cause of the command or the request, right? So we do information security, and why? Are we trying to prevent an attack? We hear us trying to prevent an attack. Okay, good luck with that. So preventing a breach, anybody want to be trying to prevent breaches? That sounds like a noble thing to do. How about preventing incidents, right? Breaches and incidents, not the same thing, right? So how many of you guys are just trying to survive? Because you know you're going to be hit, you know it's going to happen. This isn't a question of whether we are going to be attacked, hacked, breached, and penetrated or not. You will, okay? If you don't think you will, give it 5 minutes. It's like the weather in Chicago, give it 5 minutes, right? It's going to happen. The question is, what are you going to do and how are you going to react to it? And so, you guys all know the bear analogy, right? Running away from bears, campers. So, the problem is that analogy only works if there's one bad guy out there. Insert chuckle here, because there are billions. And you don't get to outrun the bear because you're going to smack right into the next bear. While you're trying to run from that one, you'll run into the next one. And it's not about getting away from preventing attacks or how we get to fly underneath the radar or how we not get hacked. It's about surviving the mauling, right? You're going to run into a bear, it's going to try to eat you, and you just try to punch it in the face and get away from it with all your body parts reasonably intact. It's like live to survive another day. This is what we are actually doing, I believe, right? So this is known as resilience. Does everybody feel comfortable with defining the word resilience? Anyone? I like that. There's a surprisingly huge lack of definition for enterprise resilience out there. So enterprise resilience, I like how you said that. It's the ability to bounce right back into the shape you were put in originally. So as a business, we're running at some kind of business model, right? We have these systems we depend on, we have these people we depend on, we have processes that get us from day to day to day to making profit. Somewhere along the line, something's going to happen and it's going to disrupt that model. Whether you get hacked, whether somebody drives a truck full of C4 through your main processing facility, doesn't matter. Something is going to happen, right? There'll be an incident, there'll be a breach. And it's a matter of bouncing back and getting back to the formula that gets you back to business. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. This is the genesis of this talk and why I'm here. So how many of you guys, with that definition in mind, feel comfortable doing that today? That's kind of what I thought. Great, so you're in the right room. So the little bit of cold water in this case, and boy, we could use it after this morning's run. You guys really are on the surface of the sun down here. I thought my friends were joking when they said, don't go running in Houston, because it's like running on the surface of the sun. For like 3 miles, they were right. So a little bit of reality check. Most of us are too busy doing security to understand what it is that we actually do business needs from us, and that is get them back to business. Okay. So this is where we're going to diverge. So most of us think we're doing it, but we probably don't do it very well. And here's why. Okay. Raise your hand and keep it raised if you have enterprise security policies. All right, you got lots of them, right? Good procedures that are written down someplace, excellent. How many of you guys have lots and lots of security controls? Fantastic. Lots and lots of blinking lights, dashboard, single panes of glass. Some of those as well, fantastic. All right, so what? Just like a psychiatrist's point, right? And you all laugh because it's kind of true. The average ratio of, so I started taking this poll as I've been giving this talk, so I thought it would be funny, but it turned out that it's a little tragic. The average ratio, we'll do the poll first. So the ratio of security dashboards, the number of analysts you have. 1 to 1? You're laughing, it's not a good sign. All right, 2 to 1? 3 to 1? 4 to 1? Worse? Okay, those of you who didn't raise your hand, where are you? Like, on that scale? Don't know? Is it you're not raising your hand because you don't know? That's kind of worrisome. So, here's the question. How many analysts do you need to do security? Anyone? If I ask you the question of how much budget do you need to secure the company? Who's comfortable answering that question? Enough. I like that. That's great. That's actually the correct answer.
More than you have.
More than you have? Not always. So preparation really is relative for a lot of us, right? Whether you work for a not-for-profit, whether you work in healthcare, finance, preparation tends to be very relative for us. And preparation is like that because we prepare for things like compliance audits. Anybody seen Josh Corman speak before? So Josh will watch this later and laugh. But Josh had this, we were talking one day and he mentioned, he was giving a talk and afterwards was kind of chatting about it. And he's like, well, look, people should be not preparing for hackers, should be preparing for auditors. It's like, that sounds kind of silly. Why? Well, because the auditor is guaranteed to show up and it will disrupt your business if you fail the audit. Hackers? Okay, so that blows my mind just a little bit. And it's the fact that you get a good chuckle out of it, but then it settles in that, wait, hold on, that's actually true. Then we start to weep just a little bit inside. So some of us prepare for compliance audits. And if that's your adversary, then that's a completely legitimate thing to prepare for. Some of us prepare for staged attacks. What's a staged attack?
That's when you create or request that be created.
So anybody pay attention over, I think it was last year, summer, a bunch of really smart government people got together and they did this simulation where, you put them in a room, cut off all communications, everybody on the outside would focus and say, all right, here's what's going to happen. Let's all pretend that the bad guys got our networks and shut down all communication in the U.S., right? Now what? And they kind of went around the table like, well, this is what I would do and this is who I would call. That's a staged attack, much like penetration testing, right? You guys familiar with penetration testing? Who does that here? Any client of penetration testers? Anybody here? So penetration testing is fantastic because you get to control it. It's like telling somebody, it's like telling a mugger, right? I want to make sure I'm prepared for being mugged. So I'm going to walk down the street tomorrow at about 3:15. But don't let me today because I'm not ready for you. I'm going to come tomorrow and try getting me tomorrow, right? And you prepare for it. Because we scope pen tests out. We say, okay, these 5 IP addresses our downtime is between, Saturday 6 p.m. to Monday 2 a.m. You can't go during business hours because that could disrupt business, right? Don't do that. And then we get ridiculous statements like, if you've been, a friend of mine told me that they were doing a phishing type of attack against the company. And one of the things on the statement of works that they requested is the CEO and his staff are out of bounds. He's like, why? He's like, well, they'll always fall for it. Step 1 of any good phishing attack, target the CEO. I mean, really? So these are staged attacks. This is stuff that we ask somebody to do for us, but only when we're ready. And it's crap. It's completely worthless, right? Because a lot of us spend a lot of time reading the headlines and going, oh my gosh, they're going to get me. They attacked this company with a super specific, they wrote burn 3 0 days, and they wrote the super specific attack against this one PLC circuit. It's like, yeah, but you're a hospital. They're probably not going to come after you like that. And if you chase every headline, you're going to burn an incredible amount of resources, capital, and business patience, might I add, by doing completely nothing. Right? So these are all synthetic risks, if you haven't noticed, and they're not, none of these are actually real to you. Not that they're not real to somebody else, but they're not real to you. So how do you prepare for things that are real? You got to ask this fun question of what if. And it's not just asking the question that's important, it's actually finding out what if. This is where things start to get a little bit difficult. So most of us, with all the things that I mentioned earlier, your policy procedures, your technology, and your single panes of glass and dashboards and bajillions of things that you look at every day, or probably don't, you are really getting good at defending this low-quality attacker, right? The person who we used to call them script kiddies, I guess it's not the politically correct term anymore, but they're just low-quality attackers. They're somebody that finds a script on the internet, wants to be a hacker, runs it against your site. No, gosh, you've got SQL injection just like everybody else, and they're not really hacking you if they're pushing buttons. I promise, it's not really hacking, right? And then there's like this high-quality attacker notion. High-quality attackers are the kind of attacker that for the last 15 years in my roles, I remember everybody saying, look, the bad guys, if they want to, they will get you, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? That's who we're talking about right now. If they want you, they will get you. So, now, because we're talking about these high-impact, potentially low-probability types of issues, where the end result could be a mushroom cloud or people actually dying, right? Loss of human life, or catastrophic financial failure or something. But the odds of it happening are like, maybe. But we're preparing for the headline stuff. That's what's going on right now. All right, so I used to say security might fail, and that's kind of the wrong way of looking at it. Security absolutely does fail, and it fails all the time. I don't know if you guys caught the headlines this morning, but there was a Chinese national living in Boston that got on a plane in Japan with a hatchet, several knives, a smoke grenade, and several other things like trash bags and oven mitts. I don't know why they mentioned oven mitts. It's kind of weird. Oven mitts, cooking tongs, and duct tape. I don't know what he's going to plan on doing on that plane, but...
Sounds like a Friday night.
And you know where they caught him? In LAX at customs when he got off the plane. That's not a security failure. That's a holy crap, somebody needs to get fired. But, we look at these things and go, I bet this is happening in your organization right now. And if you don't think it is, check your logs. Right? So, who's watched Fight Club? Remember that old movie, right? Remember in Fight Club what it was about? It was about taking a shot to the gut and being able to fight back. It's about not being a one-hit down kind of organization. This is what your business is expecting of you guys and us in information security. Because we've got people, process, and technology, and all of it tends to fail. Everything fails. Remember Dr. House? Off the air now. But he said everybody lies. The correlator to that is everything fails. Right? And it's really easy to look at all these policies and procedures and technology we have and feel really, really safe. When we're not feeling safe, we're actually feeling complacent. And those are not the same. All right? So this is a statement that I get to make that as a general blanket. A lot of the companies I've worked with and folks I've talked to, they're like, yeah, but we've got this policy that says, if this happens, we do this. And I'm like, yeah, I had one of those too 10 years ago. And everything was nicely documented. We had this web-based submission thing that if there was an incident, it would alert us all, and we could log into it, do ticket management and trouble management, and it would automatically restart systems for us. And then SQL Slammer hit, and the entire internet connection and all the internal networks went down. Okay, so our incident response process. Step 1, log into it. No, that's not going to work. All right, well, step 2, log into all the router. No, that's not going to work either. Well, those policies, right, out the window. Have any of those ever been tested? Have any of your procedures ever been tested? So if you're not tested, you're not prepared. This is a very simple statement. You have to, this is why you see when you drive past the airports every once in a while, it looks like to be a plane on fire. And if you've ever watched one of these exercises, they regularly jump into this burning thing to figure out how they're going to save people and get people out of a burning plane that maybe has crash landed or something. This isn't because it's fun. This is because they practice this thousands of times. So they can do it virtually in their sleep. It's like their Formula One team, right? They can get those tires on and off in 2.6 seconds flat, not because they read the manual once or they've tried it at home sometimes, but because they've done it 800 to 900 times per season. Right? That's muscle memory at that point, right? You're not even paying attention. You could be thinking about what you're having for dinner while you change the tires on a car, because it's just muscle memory at that point. It's reflex. So validation of what we do is absolutely required, and this is where we get to validate things like our defenses. But more than that, we get to validate our response, and that's the key. We get to validate response to our technology by being attacked. Not staged attack, like for real attack, minus all the restrictions we put on most of the companies and organizations we pay to attack us. Right? This isn't a stage thing. This is a for real thing. This is what we call, a real life exercise. And right about now, most of the organizations that have heard, and folks that have heard this for the first time, are probably looking at me like I'm absolutely insane because, well, if you blow something up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're probably going to get fired. We call that a resume generating event. But it's probably better to find out where your bad things are in the organization, what could break, what could get hacked. By the way, there's a distinction that I want to make and make it clear. What could break versus what could get hacked, those are two different things. All right? And you guys in my blog, I talk about brittle systems a lot, because brittle systems are the pain in your ears right now, right? There's things that you can't touch because if you sneeze, it goes down. And so 10 years ago, somebody thought it would be great to prototype this new application and show the client. The client loved it, and they're like, okay, stop production. Don't touch it. You're like, but you told me you were going to do security after the client approved it. Yeah, but don't touch it. It's not really an approved configuration, and it works. Just don't sneeze, don't look at it, just let it go. And inevitably, that will be the first thing to break, I promise you, when something goes bad. And because nobody's ever tested it to see what happens when it goes bad, 30 other things are going to fall around it, and it will be sheer pandalarian, right? As Jeff Foxworthy used to say. So I'd like to, again, a little bit of caution, and because random destruction leads to things like this, I've got a funny story for you, but I can't do it on camera, so we'll have to talk about it afterwards. And this is where we get introduced to concepts of red teams, right? Red teams are not, they're kind of like penetration testers, but without all the handcuffs and restrictions. You basically say, I want you to see if you can get into our company and transfer $1 or a penny or something out of the corporate coffers. I don't care how you do it, just try to do it, right? And they just sort of go. It's a lot different than scan these IP addresses and tell me if I have patches missing. You did a different game. So I really believe that we need to kind of go red or go home, because otherwise, if you're wasting a lot of time on penetration testing the old way, the way that doesn't really, it's not very productive to sort of know what you already know or know things that aren't really of value. So, anybody fans of Bill Murray? What about Bob, the movie? Bob's a shut-in with a little bit of a, psychological problem. So his psychiatrist teaches him to take baby steps, and you get from here to there by taking thousands of little steps. Friends, fans will remember Chandler getting married much in the exact same way. This is how I know I'm old, because nobody laughs at that. So validation in this is very much a journey, right? This kind of validation, you don't just show up one morning and go, cool, I'm going to get us hacked. Again, resume generating event might not be the smartest career move. So what do you really do? And it's really, how do you avoid being a deer in the headlights in this? Because you know the train is coming, and you know it's going to get you if you don't move out of the way, but you don't know which direction to go. And if you ever pass somebody on the stairs and you kind of do this 12 times and you both realize you're going the same way, stop. You go that way, I'll go this way, we'll pass each other, it'll be good. But at some point it has to hit in your brain that we're going to do this for like a week if we don't stop, right? Make a decision. Analysis paralysis is what that's called. And if you've ever worked for a Fortune 100, you live in this. They're called meetings about meetings, to schedule a meeting with the meeting. And so here's the plan for all of this, right? This is the prescriptive, how to get there from here without getting fired. Probably should have titled that talk this. So there's 4 key phases to this. The very first simple one is assessment. You want to know where you think you are. It's not where you are, because you're really not where you think you are. And usually to start, I used to do this for clients, and we take a giant whiteboard and we draw out that, draw a line across and go, okay, this is the start, this is the, not end, but this is the where we think we can afford to be. All right, so where do you think you are now? And they tell you they're pretty far to the right? You're like, okay, now what's the evidence that we have of that? I'm like, well, I have this gut feeling. Fantastic. That's not evidence, right? So assessment. You want to find out what you look like in terms of your defensive posture and preparedness on paper, air quotes, because it's probably all on paper. It's all things like, it's like the Formula One team. Yeah, we can change a tire. I've read the manual once. I have it in my back pocket. I've seen it. I know what page that's on, I think. So what are your defenses, and how prepared are you is what you want to start asking yourself as you're going through these mountains of documentation. You also want to ask that all-important question, what in the world could possibly break? It's like, sometimes you feel like Adam Savage on Mythbusters. You're like, all right, so we're going to break stuff today, right? And the question is, how bad would it be? This is sort of a scoping question for your own mental health, because you want to know how bad the foundation is before you just start randomly hacking at things and breaking them down. Because you never know when you pull one string and the rest of the sweater comes undone. Nobody? All right, no Weezer fans. So you got to look at artifacts you have from the past and look at any kind of empirical evidence that you may have. So these are penetration testing reports, vulnerability scans, PCI compliance documentation. I have a great story of a company you all know that went through, I think he said 5 or 6 separate audits, 3 audits and 3 or 4 separate incident response, like pre-incident response investigations, and the last one told them, holy crap, you've been hacked for 2 years. Right? So any kind of evidence. We're going to go into step 2. Step 2 is very simple, and you start to plan. Right? You fail to plan, you plan to fail. We've been told that since we were kids. Some of us have. So what is in scope when we do exercises like this? When you pull the lens out, what is really in scope? If that bad guy wants to get at you, they want to get to you, there is no 5 IP addresses on the internet. They might not even start there. They might start at your CEO's Facebook page, realize that his kid plays World of Warcraft every night, probably on that same laptop he brings home from the office. Guess what they're going to attack? Pretty easy, right? Or if they know that you're at Starbucks every day because you post that on Foursquare 38 times a week, right? They know what your schedule looks like. They'll sit at Starbucks. They'll put up a fake AP. You'll connect to it. You'll pass them your credentials as you log into your corporate budgeting system or something, and voila, it's very simple. So your vendors, right? Your partners, and more importantly, the you is in scope here. When we start looking at doing red team exercises, believe it or not, you are in scope, right, for this type of thing. And it's not like you as in your desk at the office, it's you, the person. Okay, so whatever it is that you do, wherever it is that you go, people that you know, ways to get in, to get information and extract it through you, it will happen. It will get used. Read the news, it happens all the time. Because the bad element doesn't care how they get at this information or this intellectual property or data, whatever you want to call it. They will simply get at it. Got a couple of banking clients that have entire teams dedicated to linguistics analysis of their brand being used in different languages. How's that? How many of you guys can fund that? Anybody? Exactly, right? But we're looking at the headlines, we're going, holy cow, somebody got hacked with this exploit. Oh, we patched. It's like my CIO used to do buzzword bingo from the headlines. And another financial loses a backup tape. Okay, stop what you're doing. Today we're starting to do backup tape encryption. Forget that that's not a really rational thing for us. It's not our biggest risk. But that decision is made and you move on. Right? You don't want to get into that role. Because the bad element doesn't discriminate. Unfortunately, you guys out there doing information security defense, you have to follow the rules. You can't, quote, hack backwards. Forget the fact that it's unethical and collateral damage of that such. You will probably get sued. International criminal law has nowhere near caught up to hacking. Right? It probably won't. With the advent of things like the cloud and the internet, there are no borders anymore. Technology is now international and borderless. Unfortunately, law is not. Good luck reconciling those. So you're always going to be on the defensive, which means that there is no opportunity to take out the sniper before he shoots at you, which means you got to be prepared to dodge bullets as they're being fired at you. So bad guys don't follow rules, right? We all know that. You can't leave a sign on your website that says, we do business between the hours of 8 a.m. Monday to 6 p.m. Friday. Please don't hack us during this time. I don't think that'll work. I get this is kind of overwhelming, right? It tends to be a little bit big, and it tends to be a little bit scary. As I said earlier, you do it wrong, you get a resume-generating event. But strategy like this can be done in pieces, and I don't have all the time in the world, otherwise we could go through an entire day's workshop on figuring out what is important, what needs to be addressed in what cases. But think about it this way. Start with small parts. Start with the smallest singular atomic unit in your organization. In most cases, it's that standalone single web app that doesn't connect to much of anything. Or so you think. Right? Because I found out that that very simple shop floor time card keeping application, yeah, it doesn't connect to anything, we promise. Except for the fact that it uploads data once a week to a very brittle database. And if you corrupt the data all the way over there, this thing goes kablooey at the worst possible time. When you're trying to process payroll. Not a good time to fail, promise. You move up to bigger semi-autonomous units. Things are connected systems, things that are brought together, right? Eventually, you get to entire business units if you work for a larger company or something, teams or organizations, right? And eventually, once you've got to a stage of comfort, notice I'm speaking in iterations here, right? This isn't like a one-shot deal. It's a repetitive process. You eventually get to do the poker all-in thing. A little scary, but you get to tell them, okay, the goal is whatever it is that you decide is the ultimate goal of the company. You have our blessing, you get out of jail free card, go to it. Right? We want to see if you can do whatever it is that you decide. Everything becomes in scope. Everything that's big red right there, right? Everything. This is just like the real world. This is not staged attacks. This is not 5 IP addresses on a Saturday afternoon when we're ready for you, and not the CEO because we'll fall for it. So that's not fair. No, there's no fair here. This is game on. This is game on, right? This is the kind of thing that happens in the real world. But I first want to make sure that I make one thing absolutely stellarly crystal, absolute clear. And that is, you need to tell someone before you do this. Okay? The question becomes, you have to be realistic about who you're going to tell. And the question becomes, who do you tell? You want to tell as few people as possible, but you do want to do that. You don't want resumes having to be created out of this kind of thing, right? You want to be the hero, not the villain. So my proposal is going after senior leadership. How many of you guys are familiar, or at least on a recognizable, they know who you are, with your chief legal counsel, senior risk officer, kind of anybody here? Fantastic. That's your best friend, right? If you know them, you know that. They can be your absolute best friend in IT security. Because they have access to people that don't listen to you. They look at things from a much different posture. If you go to them and say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire somebody to break in without telling anybody else except for you. Here's why it's a good idea, because I want to find out. We're going to do this in iteration. We're going to start small, work our way big, but we're going to start small, and I want to see things break. Well, things are going to break, and they're going to get in. If you live in a particular state down south here, the CIO may get in trouble for, read the headlines. This kind of thing happens, right? You're going to tell them, look, I want to find out where all the disasters could potentially be with my team doing this. And if something bad happens, like really bad, I can call them up and say, okay, stop. Things are going completely off the rails.